Welcome guys, this is your friend Naruto Addict 3.0 and we are back with a new fanfic. Today's fanfic is titled, What if Naruto revealed his true power, defied Kakashi, and became the future husband of Mei Tsunade? Teruyumi Hinata, Anko Mitarashi and Tenten Part 1. Let's start this fanfic. A 14-year-old Naruto was currently arguing with his so-called sensei in the hallway of the hospital. What do you mean you can't train me for the finals? Naruto yelled while Kakashi, who had his book in his face, sighed. Because Naruto, I'm already training Sasuke and I can't help you both. Plus he's facing that ninja from Suna and he needs all the help he can get. The copy nin responded while Naruto looked at him in shock. He wasn't even gonna try to help him. What the hell do you mean he needs all the help? I'm facing that Baka Neji in the first rounds, damn it, and I don't even know how to fight him. The blonde screamed. Again Kakashi doesn't bother to look at Naruto's, who had a look of anger and hurt on his face. But that all changes when Kakashi says these words. I know that, and so what? You're not ready to take the next step as a shinobi, and perhaps getting beat by Neji will wake you up to reality. Sasuke is the only one on the team who has what it takes to be a real ninja, and I won't waste my time with someone who can't even control his own chakra. I'm sorry Naruto, but you have no talent nor do you deserve to be a ninja. He said, but failed to realize that Naruto was trembling in rage with his head down. His eyes became slitted as he realized that Kakashi didn't give a shit about him. He was just like the other villagers and teachers, minus Iruka, in the academy that ruined his academics. The only reason you're a ninja in the first place is because the Sandaime felt sorry for you, and he said until smack. Naruto smacked the book out of Kakashi's hand, shocking the Junin, and saw the look on Naruto's face. His eyes were filled with anger, hatred, rage, and hurt. If looks could kill, then Kakashi would be dead right now. Naruto just looked him with a dark expression on his face. He was clenching and unclenching his hands, trying to keep himself from socking his sensei in the face. Is that so? I have no talent as ninja, huh? I'm not ready to take the next step as a ninja just because I'm not like Sasuke. He said, raising the tone on his voice. Kakashi realized that everyone in the hospital was hearing Naruto raise his voice and started to speak up. Please Naruto, calm down. He tried to say, only for the pissed blonde to cut him off. Shut up, he yelled out, making the man's eyes widen in shock. I will not calm and I will not listen to a thing you say, Hatake. Let me tell you something, you piece of shit. I may not have talent like your Uchiha, but at least I am not a coward who's a jutsu stealing bitch. I have done more for this team than that spoiled brat has. I'm the one who got your Sari out of Zabuza's water prison, not Sasuke. I'm the one who beat Haku, not Sasuke. And not only that, in the Forest of Death, I took on Orochimaru while your so-called Uchiha and Haruno froze up like little bitches. But do you want to know what pisses me off more? He growled out while Kakashi looked at Naruto with the same shocked expression. You didn't follow your own damn motto. Those who break the rules are trash, but those who abandon their comrades are lower than trash. I guess that makes you and those brats lower than trash because unlike them I took that motto to heart. You are nothing but a hypocrite. He yelled out at the silver-haired Junin. Look Naruto, Kakashi tried to say again but got cut off again. Save your bullshit for someone who cares, because as of now I'm done with this team. So go ahead and train that brat. I don't need your training. I'll find someone who will train me, and then not only will I kick Neji's, I'll kick Sasuke's and the Tanuki from Suna's also. If I don't make Chunin, then I'll ask for a team transfer. I'm pretty sure Guy would make a better sensei than you. After all, he trained a dead last that kicked Sasuke's and almost killed Gaara. Even if he is a little odd in the head. He then walks off while the doctors moved out of his way because they didn't want to face his wrath. Kakashi tried to grab Naruto's shoulder only for the blonde to swipe at his hand with his now clawed hand. Kakashi slowly backed away from the snarling blonde. Touch me and I'll rip your hand off, you son of a bitch. I can't believe you of all people was my father's student. He said and again walked off, leaving a wide-eyed Kakashi in the hallway. Little did they know, Mei Terumi, The Godime Mizukage of Kurigakure was watching and couldn't help but smile when she saw her so-called deceased fiancé was still alive but frowned when she realized that the council lied to her about him dying with the Yondaime who arranged a marriage with her and his son, and also growled when she saw his sensei brush him off. "Don't worry, my maelstrom, if he won't help you then I will," she said, and shunshuns out of the hospital. Naruto was now in a forest, no longer wearing that black jumpsuit but a black one with fingerless gloves, sitting under a tree branch with a blank expression on his face. "I should have known that bastard wouldn't teach me anything. Hell, the only thing he did teach me was tree walking while going to train the Uchiha in private. That. No talent I was the one who saved his Sari from Zabuza when he trapped him in that water prison while that Tem and Haruno wanted to run away like little bitches. He then closes his eyes and falls asleep. I'll show him no talent when I kick Neji's, Sasuke's, and that Sand Nin's in the finals and make Chunin. It's time I stopped playing the fool and show Konoha what I can really do," he mumbles. He then finds himself in his mindscape, which was in the form of a forest. He opens his eyes and finds himself resting his head on the lap of a red-eyed woman who in his eyes looked like a goddess. She wore a ruby-red kimono with flowers on it and had flawless skin. She smiled back at Naruto, who did the same as well. "Kid, we have to find a way to get rid of that seal the hubby put on you in the forest of death," Kyuubi said while Naruto nods. "I know, Q-chan. It's been screwing up with my chakra control and I can only stay in contact with you for a few minutes, so what do we do?" Naruto asked. Kyuubi thought about it and was about to speak until a voice spoke. "Simple, my other half, we must become one again." That's when another version of Naruto appeared, but there's a difference. Instead of being 5 feet 3, he was 5 feet 6 and was built like an athletic swimmer. There was hardly any baby fat on his face and the whisker marks on his face were gone, and he also had deep blue slitted cerulean eyes and canines that jutted from his upper lip. His hairstyle and facial appearance was similar to the Yondaime's Minato as a kid. He also wore a black jumpsuit. "Hello, my other half. How many years has it been?" Naruto's other half said while he smiles. 7 years, he started to say but felt a pull in his mindscape by the seal. "Look, we only have a few seconds before I'm pulled out by that accursed seal. We need to become one again," Naruto said while his other half nods. "Hi, let's do this." The other half replies and reaches his hand out, as does Naruto. When their hands grasp each other, their bodies glow. Kyuubi's eyes widen in shock when a white light surrounds them and the white orb grows larger and larger until it covers the entire mindscape. Outside Naruto's body, Naruto's resting body is surrounded by a blue cocoon made of chakra and it slowly grows white. After a few minutes, cracks then started to surround the cocoon and then it shattered and there stood the new and improved Naruto wearing a new outfit. He was now 5 feet 6 wearing a dark blue long-sleeved jacket with pockets on it and a silver line going down the sleeves. He also wore black Anbu-styled pants with a silver line going down the middle and Anbu-styled sandals that stopped below his knees. He also wore a black muscle shirt that hugged his body and wore it like a second skin, and it showed off his chest and abs. On the back of his jacket was the picture of the Kyuubi in a crouching position as well as the 5 elemental kanjis for water, wind, lightning, fire, and earth. He also had black fingerless gloves on and they had metal plates on them. He also had crimson highlights in his bangs. Naruto walks over to the lake and looks at himself. He smirks and looks at his new clothes. He then stretches his arms and sighs in relief. "Man, it's good to be whole once again. I don't know what I'd do if I had to play the fool for one more day. I better inform Oji-san that I'm back and ask him about this seal that's cutting me off from Q-chan," he says, but stops for a moment and performs a ram seal. Small trees started to form around him but stopped when they only reached to his height. He sighs and wipes a bead of sweat off his brow. "Damn, I must have lost a lot of my strength when my soul split in half. I guess I have to regain my strength again," he says until he hears a voice that sounds like an angel's. "Perhaps I can help you, Naruto-kun," said the soft and serene voice. Naruto turns around and sees someone whom he can only describe as a goddess in human form. It was the only way to describe the woman that was in his line of vision. She had long red russet-colored hair which was pulled up into an elegant topknot on the top of her head, and a bang came down from the top of her head and covered her right eye. Her eyes were a beautiful jade green, a small nose and beautiful lips which had blue lipstick on them, all of which were perfect for her face. She also had on a full-body fishnet suit, and over it she wore what appeared to be a one-piece blue garment that hugged her hourglass body and showed off her flawless cream-colored legs. This woman was without a doubt the epitome of beauty, and Naruto couldn't help but blush. May, who was watching his eyes wander on her figure, giggled at his dazed look and smiled. "Are you done checking me out now?" she asked, which caused Naruto to blink for a while, and when he realized what he was doing, he turned red and jumped back. Sorry. I didn't mean to stare at you like that," he said while she giggles and walks up to him until they're a few feet from each other. Naruto had to keep his eyes from ogling her cleavage and chest. "It's okay. I expect my future husband to look at me like that," she said. "Oh, I see. Wait, what?" yelled Naruto, whose eyes were the size of dinner plates, while May just smiled at him. "I'm your fiancé, Naruto-kun," she said, and Naruto did the only thing he could do. He fainted while May looked at his unconscious form. She sighs and rubs the back of her neck. "Maybe I shouldn't have been so forward," she says to herself. A few hours later, Naruto slowly opens his eyes and finds his head resting on her lap while she smiles down at him. "I'm glad you're finally awake, Naruto-kun," May says while Naruto sits up and rubs his head in embarrassment. "Sorry for fainting, but I could have sworn you said that I was your fiancé," he said, and she nods. "Yes, I did say that, Naruto-kun. You and I were supposed to be engaged, but certain members in this village lied to me about you dying, and I need to talk to the Hokage about it," she said while caressing his face while he had to hold in a shudder. I see, but I don't think Tsuruoji had nothing to do with it. That's not his way of acting. I should know. He did train me before that incident occurred," he said while she blinked at him in confusion. "Okay. Let's go meet him, and after that I'll help you with your training," she said, and wraps an arm around him, pulling him close to her ample chest while he blushes a little and they disappear in a swirl of water. Hokage Tower. Sarutobi was currently doing paperwork while glaring at the rest that was piled up on his desk and on his floor. "I swear Minato died just to get away from this accursed paperwork," he muttered. That's when a swirl of water appeared in his office and he jumped out of his seat, pulling out a kunai. When it cleared, he saw May the Godime Mizukage with a boy who looked like a younger version of Minato. Hiruzen blinks for a while and looks at him for a while before his eyes widened. "Naruto?" he asked while the boy nodded and grins. "What's up, Tsuruoji? I'm back," he said. Sarutobi blinks for a while and then smiles. "I see. That's good to hear, Naruto. It must have been hell for you to play the fool for the last 7 years," he replied while the blonde sighs in frustration. "I'm just glad to be whole once again. Do you have any idea how tough it was for me to do it? The only difference is my strength and knowledge. I lost half of it after what happened to me when I was 7. He replied while Sarutobi nods. "I see. Mizukage Dono, I apologize for ignoring you. What can I do for you?" he asks while May has a serious expression on her face. "You can start by explaining why you sent me a false document stating that my fiancé died along with his father, Minato Namikaze, during the Kyuubi attack 14 years ago and cancelled the arranged marriage," she asked in a dark tone. "An action like can be considered an act of war," May growled out while Sarutobi looked at her with a look of confusion on his face. "I'm sorry, Mizukage Dono, but I don't recall sending you a document in cancelling an arranged marriage," he replied while May raised an eyebrow while Hiruzen smirks. "I may be old, Mizukage Dono, but I'm not senile. Do you happen to have the documents with you?" he asked while she nods and pulls it out of her garment and hands it to Hiruzen, who takes it. He opens the paper up and looks at it. When he looks down at the Hokage signature, his eyes widen then narrow. He then looks up at the Mizukage. "I'm sorry to say, Mizukage Dono, but this isn't my seal of approval. This seal is a fake," he says, and her eyes widened. "What? But I could have sworn. Are you sure?" I mean the elders of this village had an Anbu with a blank mask sent this. Naruto's and Sarutobi's eyes widened when she said elders and an Anbu with a blank mask. Naruto's eyes narrow as did Sarutobi's. I'm going to kill that crippled bastard and his flunkies. Naruto said in a dark tone. You're gonna have to get in line, Naruto, because I'm gonna deal with them first. Those idiots could have caused a war for doing this. Sarutobi growled and smashed his fist onto the desk. Mei's eyes widened in shock. So you didn't send that Anbu with the blank mask? Hiruzen shook his head. No, I didn't. Mizukage Dono, on behalf of myself and Konohagakure no Sato, I offer you my deepest apology. I promise you once I get enough proof on those fools, I'll have them publicly executed for treason and nearly starting a war. If not, then I'll have them sent to you in chains and you may deal with them. I know it isn't much now, but unless I find proof of this, then there's little I can do. He says while she nods. That was when Naruto spoke up. Speaking of seals, Oji-san, there's this seal on me that's screwing up my chakra and contact with Q-chan. Naruto then lifts up his shirt, showing off his six-pack and getting a small blush out of the Mizukage. Sarutobi walks over to Naruto, kneels down, and looks at it. He notices 5 extra seals on the Shiki Fuin and HMMS. The Gogyo Fuin, 5 elemental seals. Looks like my student Orochimaru's work. He mutters. Just give me a minute to get rid of this, Naruto. He says, and his fingertips glow blue in his right hand. Brace yourself, Naruto. Gogyo Kaien, 5 elementals unseal. He says and thrusts his palms into Naruto's torso and removes them instantly. Naruto gasps out in pain and clutches his stomach. Sweet Kami, that hurt. He cries out but can feel his chakra control return to normal. Thanks, Oji-san. Is it possible for me to get my parents' scrolls now? He asks and gets a nod from the old man. He goes to a gray vault and opens it up, pulling out 3 scrolls. One was yellow and had his father's jutsu, the other was red and had his mother's, and the last one contained his mother's sword style, and her fighting style. Here you go, Naruto. The rest are in your family's compound, but I had to seal it back due to certain people trying to break into it. Hiruzen says, getting a nod from the blonde. Thanks, Oji. I'll be spending the next 2 months training with Mei-chan so that I can get my strength back to what it once was. He says while Sarutobi had a look of confusion on his face. Shouldn't Kakashi be training you to face Neji Hyuga? He asked, only to see Naruto's eyes grow cold. No, unfortunately I'm not worth his time and don't have any talent. But what pissed me off was the fact that he said the only reason I became a ninja in the first place was because you pitied me. He said while Sarutobi's eyes became murderous and he grinds his teeth in frustration. He was gonna have a long talk with Kakashi after the Chunin exams. I see. I'll be sure to deal with him after the finals, Naruto. I wish you luck in your training and we'll see you in 2 months. Now I have to get back to my paperwork. He said with disdain in his voice while Mei's sweat drops at the piles of paperwork. She had the same issue in Kiri. Naruto snorts at the sight and then grins. I think I know a way on how to get rid of your problem, Saru Oji. Naruto says. Sarutobi looks at him in shock, then appears on his knees begging, scaring the blonde while anime tears fell from his face. Please tell me, Naruto. He asks in a hysterical voice while Naruto thinks about it in mock thought while Mei just looks at him with wide eyes. I don't know, Oji-san. What do I get if I tell you? Naruto asks. Anything. Access to the Hokage vault. Sanin traveling rights. Name it and I'll do all in my power to grant it. He says frantically. Show this old man some mercy and tell me, please. Did I mention that I always thought of you as my grandson? His lip quivers and he does the puppy eyes jutsu. Naruto, however, was laughing his off inside of his mind. Okay, I'll tell you. He says while Sarutobi's eyes become stars. Why not use Kage Bushins to finish it faster? They pass their knowledge back to the user when they disperse. He says while Sarutobi's jaw drops and Mei just look at him. The old man then gets up from his desk and he starts banging his head on the wall while calling himself a baka. Naruto, however, was laughing at him but then calms down when Sarutobi returns to normal. Well, I'm a man of my word, Naruto, so for helping me find a way to finish paperwork faster, I'm giving you your first S-ranked mission pay for helping 2 Kages deal with our worst enemies, which is that. He says, pointing to the piles of paperwork. And also access to the Hokage vault and Sannin traveling rights. He finishes. Naruto had the biggest grin on his face and was about to say something but found himself being glomped by Mei and having his head buried into her cleavage. Yes. My future husband rid me of my biggest issue. She said, and burying him even deeper into her chest. MMPH. Naruto says while waving his arms around the air, struggling to breathe and free his head from her cleavage. Sarutobi was watching this and couldn't help but giggle pervertedly at the scene. Naruto, you lucky bastard. If Jiraiya was here, he'd be flying out the window via nosebleed right now. Naruto was finally able to pry himself from her cleavage and gasp for air. Q, who had just woken up, was fuming. Who does she think she is, hugging my Naru-kun like that? It should be me hugging him like that. She ranted while her eyes glowed red. When Mei releases him, a sly smirk appears on her face. I guess that means that I'll have to reward you for helping me, Naruto-kun. She says in a voice while a blush appears on Naruto's face and he starts sputtering. She then leans next to his ear and whispers into it. Naruto's blush grew bigger and a trickle of blood drips down his nose. Mei-chan, he says while she giggles and sets him down. She then winks at him, grabs his hand, and leads him out of the Hokage tower while swaying her hips in his line of vision. Naruto just kept his eyes on her and drool escapes from the side of his mouth. Q, however, was grumbling. Her isn't that great. Mine is way cuter. Naruto snaps out of his daze and speaks to her in his mind. Q-chan, are you jealous? He asks, and she HMPS. Please, why would I, the queen of the Makai realm, be jealous of a ninja? I know Mai is hotter. How come you don't stare at mine like that? She asks with a pout on her face. An evil smirk appears on his face. Because I have another reason for wanting your. He says, sending pictures in his mind of him violating her. She sees them, blushes and hides her with her tails. Hentai. Oh well, I can't blame you for wanting to do that to me. Think you can convince Mei-chan to let you do that to her? She asks with a sly grin on her face, which causes Naruto to nearly fall on his face. What? He yells out loud, getting Mei's attention. Is something wrong, Naruto-kun? She asks while they head to the forest again. Naruto looks at her and shakes his head. No, Q-chan is being perverted. She mentioned something about me doing something to you. He says and rubs the back of his head while looking away. Mei raises an eyebrow and stares at her fiancé. You doing what to me? She asks, and Naruto gulps and motions her to lean over, and she does. He whispers into her ear, and after a while she blushes at the thought. Naruto moves his head away from her and she just stares at him for a while. She then grins pervertedly at him. So you like to give it a try, Naruto-kun? She asks, and he gives her a shocked look. Mei-chan, are you serious? We barely know each other. He protests while she laughs. I know. I don't expect us to become that intimate for a while, but if you want to, we could, she started to say, but Naruto waves his arms in protest. No, it's fine. We can wait. He says, laughing nervously while Mei laughs at him. You're so cute when you act like that. Anyway, before we start our training, let's introduce ourselves. She says, getting a nod from Naruto. I'm Mei Terumi, soon to be Mei Terumi Namikaze. God, I'm Mizukage if Kurigakure. My likes are my fiancé, village, green tea, and hot springs. My dislikes are men who think women are only good for breeding, traitors, and the elders of Konoha who lied to me about the death of my fiancé. My hobbies are relaxing in hot springs, swimming, and performing tea ceremonies. My dream is to get married, have children, and know what it's like to be loved by a real man. She says while Naruto blushes. My name is Naruto Namikaze Senju. My likes are training, ramen and dango, Uruka-sensei, Oji-san, and Q-chan. My dislikes is most of the village, Team 7, Uchihas, rapists, and the civilians and elders of the council. My hobbies are sparring with Oji-san, morning jogs, swimming, gardening, cooking, and a lot of other things. My dreams are to become the strongest ninja to ever exist, revive my clan and have a large family. He said, and Mei smiles. So does that mean you'll have to take on more than one wife? Mei asks and Naruto nods. Yeah, but only those that will love me for me and not for my status or money. I hate people who do that. I hope you're okay with this, Mei-chan. He replies while she thinks about it. I'm fine with it. However, I want to be the one who bears your first child, understand? She asks and he nods with a blush on his face. Sure. Mei smiles and kisses him on the forehead. Oh, I also have this for you. No one has held this contract for a long time and is considered to be very powerful. She bites her thumb, performs a few seals and then slams her hand onto the ground. Kuchio's no jutsu. Summoning jutsu. In a puff of smoke a large silver-white scroll appears and on top of it was the head of what looked like a silver dragon with fangs. This Naruto-kun is the contract for the Akuhe Hydra clan. They're a clan who are of a higher group of serpents but they're related to dragons. I found it in a cave off the shores off Mizu no Kuni. Once you sign this, you'll be sent to their realm to meet their leader, so try not to upset her or she'll kill you. Mei said in a serious tone while Naruto gulps but nods. The scroll opens up and reveals a list that only had one name in it, but it was smudged so Naruto couldn't tell whose name was on it. He then bites his thumb and smears his name on the blank space next to the smeared name and finishes it with the Senju symbol. His name glows blue on the scroll and it suddenly trembles and rolls up, shocking the blonde. The head on it comes to life and lets out a roar before disappearing in a puff of smoke, as does Naruto. Mei was watching this and couldn't help but be afraid for him. I hope he's the one, Yamada no Orochi. She says and sits cross-legged onto the grass. Meanwhile, Naruto appears in a puff of smoke in another world. He looks around and couldn't help but admire the sight. He was currently at a lake's edge. Turning around he saw a forest that seems to stretch for miles, and next to the forest was a green hilly area that was attached to a huge mountain. At the foot of the mountain was a huge cave. As he finished surveying the area he turned back towards the lake and sat down. Okay, I'm here now, what do I do? He says to himself until he hears the sound of splashing water and turns his head around only to see a large gold-yellow slitted eye that was the size of a full-grown man staring at him. The eye was connected to the head of what looked like a giant serpent that had silver-white skin and blackish-green spots on it. It also had what appeared to be long sharp spikes on its head and probably went down its neck and back. Naruto just sat there staring at the giant eye for a few minutes and did the only thing any person would do when they saw something of that size. He screamed like a little girl and ran for his life. While he did that, a small sweat drop appeared on the Hydra's head as it watched Naruto run away, waving his arms around and screaming his head off about giant snakes trying to eat him again. Inside his mindscape, Q was rolling around the ground laughing her off and clutching her stomach. Oh Kami, this is priceless. Naruto-kun is running away from Yama-chan. She then stops and looks up at the sky. Can't blame him though, Yama-chan does have that effect on people when they see her in that form. But it was still funny. She says and continues to laugh. Naruto was currently running away until a large white and blackish green tail stopped in front of him, causing him to crash into it. Again the Hydra sweat drops but chuckles when he falls over, clutching his head. Damn, that hurt. He mumbles and finds himself staring in shock as the Herta fully rises from the water. Water glistened from its body and dripped from its black underbelly. Naruto's eyes were the size of basketballs and his jaw was on the ground as he looked at the Hydra. It has 8 heads and 8 tails. One of the heads moved down to Naruto and looks at him for a while. Why, hello little ninja. What are you doing in my realm? The feminine voice asked while Naruto just sputter and points at her. Said Hydra sighs at this. Why is it that people always act like this whenever I'm in this form? She thought and then decides to show her true form. She glows white and starts to transform. As she shrunk, her heads melded together and became one head while her tails resided into her body and she became smaller and more human-shaped. When the transformation started to end, there was a flash of bright light which temporarily blinded Naruto. When his eyesight returned to him, he was met with the most beautiful woman he had ever seen in his life. She had silky smooth black hair that stopped to her mid-back and it had silver highlights in it. Her skin was creamy white and smooth and it seemed to shine from the sunlight. She had beautiful gold-yellow slitted eyes and fangs jutted from her upper lip. She wore a black kimono that had white dragons on it and the outfit seemed to hug her hourglass figure and that weren't too big or too small. She also had a slit on the right side of her kimono and showed off her long, flawless legs. Naruto couldn't help but blush at her appearance. A sly grin appeared on her face and she leans over to give him a better view of her cleavage. Naruto slowly opened his eyes and finds himself sleeping under a tree with his body resting on it. He groans and slowly gets up. Man, I had the weirdest dream. I was face to face with an eight-headed, eight-tailed hydra that was the size of the Hokage Tower and it then transformed into a beautiful woman. He mutters but then hears a soft and angelic voice speak up. So I'm just a dream you thought of. That really hurts my feelings. He looks around the area and doesn't see anybody but then he looks up to see the same woman from last time sitting on a tree looking down at him with a hurt look on her face. Naruto looks at her and his eyes become bug-eyed. Oh Kami, you are real. He says out loud, getting a grin from her. Of course I am, you silly ninja. This is my human form after all. She then leaps off the tree and lands on the ground softly. She walks up to the blonde and looks down at him. I am the Yamada no Orochi but call me Shiroi Akuhe, White Hydra. Shiroi asks in a calm tone while Naruto nods. Okay. So you're not the boss summon for a guy named Orochimaru? Naruto asks while Shiroi blinks in confusion and then shakes her head. No, I've never heard of him. Why? She asks. Because he's a senin for the snakes. He answered but shivered when he saw the dark look in her eyes. Light green chakra swirled around her and she let out a hiss. I see. So that traitorous bastard Manda has a summoner. I should have killed that power-hungry fool when I had the chance a long time ago. He had the nerve and audacity to try and overthrow me. The Yamada no Orochi. She hissed out and cracked her knuckles. I swear I'll kill that legless worm and feed his remains to the crocodiles. Anyway, I'm sorry for scaring you. She paused for a moment until Naruto rubbed the back of his head nervously and spoke up. Sorry Shiroi-chan, I'm Naruto Namikaze Senju. He said but didn't notice the small blush appear on her face. Naruto, I know you signed the contract for my clan but I must ask you this. What will you do with me as your boss summon and why should I even let you summon my kin? Shiroi asked in a serious tone. Naruto looks at her with an expression that represented a strong will and determination. Shiroi-chan, I give you not only my word but I swear on my clan's honor and title that I'll never abuse the power of you and your kin. I will treat you like I treat my comrades and not as tools and I wish to fight by your side as an ally. He said while Shiroi looks at him for a while and then smiles. Your eyes hold no lies or ill intentions. Very well Naruto Namikaze Senju. I Shiroi Akuhe, the Yamada no Orochi and leader of the reptile clan grant you the right to summon me and my kin. Now hold out your right arm. She orders and he does. Her fangs extend and she clamps them down on Naruto's wrist. Said blonde winces in pain while he felt a burning sensation go through his wrist and forearm. The pain dies down and she lets go of his arm. Naruto looks at his right arm and sees the tattoo of an eight-headed hydra wrapped around his arm. He looks at Shiroi for a while then bows to her, getting a look of surprise from the hydra. Thank you Shiroi-chan for giving me the honor to summon your kin. He says and she smiles. You're welcome young Namikaze. The last couple of people who tried to force me under their command were crushed, poisoned, melted by my acid or eaten, though I had to cut back on eating ninja because they give me heartburn. She said while Naruto chuckles nervously. Remind me to never piss you off Shiroi-chan. He replies while she laughs lightly and does a dismissive wave. Don't worry. Also to summon me you must wipe your blood on top of the tattoo. There are also other members of my clan. They are the sea serpents, the crocodiles, hydras, and Komodo dragons. She explains and he nods. I also have a gift for you. She says and walks over to the lake and stretches her hand out. Ripples appear around the water and with a splash, a katana with a deep blue hilt, white diamond-shaped patterns that has a white diamond on the end of it. The guard was black and carved in the form of a hydra coiling around the blade. It was in a black and red sheath that had a white dragon wrapped around it with its maw opened. She grabbed the sword and walked over to Naruto. She then held it out with both of her hands in front of the blonde, who looked at it for a while and at her. She nods for him to take it and he does. When he unsheathes it, he gasps at the blade's beauty. It was a silver blade and there seemed to be no scratches or any sign of markings on it. He could also see his reflection off the blade and the sun's rays shining on it only made it more dazzling. This sword is beautiful, he says, and Shiroi nods while smiling. Thank you, Naruto-kun. This sword is called Shinken no Akuhei, Fang of the Hydra. I had it forged from my fangs and scales and forged in the white flames of a dragon and cooled in Susanoo's lake. Try channeling your chakra affinity into the sword, she says, and he nods. He channels his lightning affinity into the blade and suddenly lightning runs up the blade and the blonde's eyes widen in shock and awe. Wow, so I can channel my chakra and elemental affinity through the blade. This is awesome. He then stops channeling chakra into the sword, sheathes it, and then hugs Shiroi, whose eyes widen in surprise but returns it, and they then let go of each other. So how do I leave this place, Shiroi-chan? Naruto asks. Just imagine yourself back at your previous location, she replied. Naruto pictures the forest of Konoha and Mei and he disappears in a puff of smoke. Konoha Forest. Mei was sitting in the same spot where Naruto disappeared from, but then she jumps up on her feet when a puff of smoke appears, and when it clears, Naruto is seen with a sheathed katana in his left hand. He then finds himself being glomped by Mei and his head buried into her cleavage. Naruto-kun, you're back. I thought Yamada no Orochi killed you, she cried out while the blonde let out an MMPH. After freeing himself, she lets him go and he smiles at her. Now Naruto, you said you needed to get your original strength back, right? She asks and he nods. Yeah, when I was 7 I had an accident where I was working on a seal that'll let Q-chan come in and out of the seal without killing me. I wrote the wrong sealing symbol on my father's jutsu and it resulted in my chakra and Q's to go haywire. I came so close to dying that day, but luckily Saruoji was there and placed chakra compression seals all over my body, he said, getting a look of horror from her face while he continued. He had to call in my Kyofu, Jiraiya the Gamma Sennin, to repair my seal. While that happened, Q-chan had to separate half of my soul in order for me to recover and also turned me into a Hanyu that day. He saw Mei was about to speak up and he just chuckles. No, I didn't gain fox ears or a tail. I gained those when I turn 18. I did gain claws, fangs, and other abilities I don't feel like explaining out in the open. If that incident hadn't happened, I would be at least as strong as an Anbu, but now I'm only on par with a high Chunin level nin, so I need to gain it back as soon as possible. He finished explaining and she nods. So what affinities do you have? Mei asked while Naruto pulled out a piece of white paper and focused his chakra into it. First it split it in half, then it got soaked up on one side, wrinkled up in the other and burned and turned to dust on the other sides. Mei's eyes widened in shock as she saw that he had an affinity for all 5 main elements. Being the container for the most powerful Biju in the elementals and a Hanyu does have its advantages. I gained wind from my father, water and lightning from my mother, and fire from Q since it's her major affinity. I gained earth from one of her tails but also gained a few sub-elemental affinities. He pulls out another chakra paper, focuses even harder on it. A plant grows out of one side and the other side is molten. Mei looks at the paper and her eyes were bigger than dinner plates. Why, you have the same sub-element like I do. And you also have Mokudan. She then squeals out loud and pulls him into a hug, then nuzzles his cheek. My future husband is so amazing. She then lets go of him and he then destroys the 2 papers. The last thing I need is for those bastards in the council knowing this. So Mei-chan, after we finish training, do you want to go to the hot springs? He asks his future wife, getting a smile from the young Kage. I'd love to. We can go in the co-ed side and wash each other's backs, Naruto-kun, she says in a seductive tone while Naruto rubs the back of his head, blushing. Sure, I'll wash your back, Mei-chan, he replies, and the both start to laugh. That's when Naruto spoke up. You have a beautiful laugh, Mei-chan. This causes a blush to appear on her face. Thank you. Anyway, let's get started on your training. For the next couple of hours, Naruto worked in his chakra exercises as well as did push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups in his mother's Kenjutsu and Taijutsu styles, the hidden Mitsurugi Ryu Flying Heavenly Sword, and Shinku Ryu Ken Crimson Dragon Fist. After spending the next 5 hours training his off, they headed for the hot springs. After signing in, Mei reserved the co-ed side for her and Naruto only. Said blonde was relaxing his body into the warm soothing water with his eyes closed. Sleeping on top of his head curled up into a ball was a red fur-covered fox with 2 tails. It was Q. Said fox's ears shot up and opened one of her pink-colored eyes. She saw Mei walking towards the hot spring with her hair down and a towel wrapped around her body. A grin appears on her face and she jumps off of Naruto's head and into the hot spring, swimming away from him and later leaps on a warm rock, shakes the water off and falls back asleep. Naruto feels 2 arms wrap around his neck and a chest pressed up against his back. He turns his head to see Mei smiling at him and she kisses him lightly on the lips. Said blonde returns it and gets a good look at her body. The towel hugged her flawless body like a second skin and showed off every single curve her body had. Naruto wraps one arm around her waist and pulls her onto his lap, getting an eep and a look of surprise from Mei. Naruto smirks at her and pulls her body close to his. Are you comfy, Mei-chan? He asks while she smiles and rests her head on his shoulder. Naruto inhales her scent and she smelled like exotic fruits. Mei shivers a little but lets out a sigh and closes her eyes. Well, don't you two look cute together? Q says telepathically while Naruto rolls his eyes at her. Look Q, I'm not ignoring you anything, but I'm trying to spend time with my fiancé. I promise I'll make it up to you when we go back to the apartment. Q looks at Naruto and grins. Fine. When we get back to your apartment you have to let me sleep with you in my human form. She says, giggling inside her mind while Naruto blushes and glares at the grinning fox. He then gets an evil glare on his face, making Q, who's in her fox form, I twitch. If I were you Q, I'd watch my backside when sleeping with me. I might end up doing something to it that'll make you scream my name. Q shivers and gives him a heated glare. Try it and I'll change your gender, you perverted Hanyu. She growled while Naruto snickers at her expression, but then his eyes widen and then narrow when he hears a giggle from the distance. Mei-chan. Naruto says. The Mizukage opens her jade eyes and looks at him. Yes. There's a pervert nearby. He whispers into her ear, making her eyes widen a little. Would you be so kind and send him here so that I can deal with him? She asks. Naruto nods and gently removes her from his lap, then gets up, acting like he's leaving the hot spring. On the tree branch, a man with long white spiky hair, wearing a green gi, a red vest, red geta sandals, and a headband with the kanji for oil, was peeping on Mei, who got up and looked like she was about to remove her towel with a telescope. He was Jiraiya, the Gamma Sennin. Right now he was giggling like a madman when he saw Mei about to remove her towel. Oh yeah, I hit the jackpot with this one. My next book is gonna be a huge hit. He says as a small drop of blood falls from his nostril. Little did he know that Naruto, who was now in a pair of shorts, was behind him, crouching and grinning like a Cheshire cat. He puts his 2 hands together and extends his index and middle fingers and aimed them at Jiraiya's. Konoha Taijutsu no Ugi, Sennin Garashi. He yells. Startling Jiraiya was too slow to react and ended up having a pair of chakra-enhanced fingers shoved in his, resulting in a girly scream from Jiraiya, who was clutching his butt in pain and was sent flying into the hot springs, creating a big splash, soaking Mei, whose eyebrow was twitching dangerously. Steam was coming off of her skin while Jiraiya, who was rising out of the water, was growling. When I get my hands on whoever did that, all, he started to say until he froze up from the murderous intent he felt behind him and slowly turned his head to see an angry Mei glaring at him with her icy jade eyes. Jiraiya gulped and started to laugh nervously. Now Mizukage dono, I can explain. He started to say until he heard her crack her knuckles loudly and walked over to him slowly. Shut up and I'll make this as painless, actually I won't. she said as her shadow loomed over the now whimpering Jiraiya. Naruto was in the changing room with his clothes on and his katana strapped to his back, leaning against the wall. 3, 2, 1 inch, he says to himself, and suddenly the sound of girly screams and fists making contact with a body were heard all over Konoha. Hiruzen was in his office reading his Ika Ika book while his shadow clones were doing the paperwork. He then heard a scream coming from the hot springs and sighs. When will you ever learn, Jiraiya? He mumbles. Please, not the face, not the face. No, not there either, please. Naruto winced when he heard the sound of a foot making contact with a groin. Oh Kami, my manhood, the Toad Sage screamed out while Q, who walked into the room, saw Naruto and leapt on the top of his head. Shouldn't you go help your Kyufu, Naruto-kun? I don't think he'll enjoy having his jewels melted off by your fiancé. Q asked while the blonde shrugs. Not now. Let Mei-chan beat the crap out of him for a while. He says and strokes her back with a finger, getting a purr from the fox. 10 minutes later, the beating stops and Naruto walks back into the hot spring section and sweat drops at the beaten, broken, bloody, and twitching form of Jiraiya. Mei-chan was massaging her sore knuckles and mumbled something about perverted old fools and melting off their balls with lava. Naruto chuckles at this and walks over to Mei and then places his hands around hers and they glow green. Is that better, Mei-chan? Naruto asks his future bride, who smiles and kisses Naruto on the lips. Yes, it is, she says. They then notice Jiraiya groaning and getting up from the beating he just suffered. Oh Kami, I haven't been beaten that badly since Minato caught me peeking on Kushina. He mumbled while popping his back in place. Naruto's eyes twitched dangerously when he heard that. What was that, Kyofu? Do I need to let Mei-chan here melt your balls off? He growled out, only for Jiraiya to turn around and see Naruto glaring at him. Gaki. Wow, what happened to you? The last time I saw you, you were a chibi version of your dad. He said with a goofy grin on his face. A small smile appears on his face. I hit a growth spurt. That and I was finally able to become whole again. He said, causing Jiraiya's eyes to widen a little but return to normal. I see. He then looks at the Mizukage and back at Naruto and a grin appears on his face. So do you mind explaining what you're doing with the Mizukage, Gaki? He asks and Naruto mutters about perverted godfathers being nosy. If you must know, she's my fiancé. He says, causing Jiraiya's jaw to drop. Did you just say that she is your fiancé? Naruto groans and nods while rubbing the back of his head. Jiraiya then finds himself bowing down before his godson, chanting, I am not worthy, while Mei and Q sweat drop. I'm never gonna leave my children, kids, alone with that man. They both thought while Naruto sighs at how he was acting. Jiraiya then places his hands on his godson's shoulders while anime tears fell down his face. I'm so proud of you, kid. 14 years old and you already have an older woman, a cage no less, as your future bride. He ranted on until Mei coughed out loud, getting their attention. Please don't corrupt my future husband, Jiraiya-sama, or I'll have to kill you. She said in a sweet tone, making the man shiver at the tone. Don't worry, I don't plan on it. Yet. So Gaki, do you need any help with your training? I already have Mei-chan helping me, but I could use your help with Fuinjutsu and get me back to my original level of strength. Also, do you think you can help me with the Rasengan? He asks and gets a nod from Jiraiya. Sure, I was actually planning on teaching it to you when I came back and let you sign the Toad contract. Thanks, but Mei-chan already gave me a contract for the Akuhe Hydra clan, but I could use the Toads as a support summons. He said, and Jiraiya's jaw dropped again and saw the tattoo of an 8-headed 8-tailed Hydra on his right arm. Damn Gaki, you're gonna be one hell of a ninja if you have that clan as your summon, and sure, I'll let you use the Toads as a support summon. Naruto grins while Mei walks in to get changed. I also heard from the old man that you tangoed with a white snake in the forest of death. Are you okay? He asks in a serious yet sincere tone and Naruto nods. Yeah. Despite the fact that I was eaten alive by a snake and then fought said summoner and got my chakra screwed up by a seal, the Tem slammed into my gut while my teammates froze up like a bunch of bitches. Other than that, I'm fine. Speaking of seals, Do you know the Gogyo Fuin, 5 elemental seal? Jiraiya blinks at Naruto for a while but nods. Yes, I do. Why? He asks. I might need to use it in the finals because there's guy from Suna who's a container like me, only his seal makes him unstable. I know he has the Ikibi no Tanuki Shukaku sealed inside him due to the fact that the demon is a sand apparition. Naruto explained, and Jiraiya rubs his chin for a while and grins. I see. So are you facing him first? Jiraiya asks. No, I'm facing a prick named Neji Hyuga. Naruto answers. But I already know how to beat that idiot due to the fact that the Hyugas only use their Byakugan and Juken style, but Gaara is gonna be tough for me even when I gain my strength back. He can manipulate sand to the point where it protects him and attacks his opponents. He also has a final defense called Suna no Yoroi, sand armor, and it is stronger than steel. But it's also his weakness. In order for him to keep his armor strong, he needs chakra. His taijutsu is non-existent and I doubt that he knows genjutsu. Naruto explains while Jiraiya smirks. Great. So we have 2 months to get you ready to face the Hyuga kid and the Tanuki, raccoon dog kid. But let me ask this first, Gaki. What did your sensei Kakashi teach you, because the old monkey just glared at me and told me to ask you? Jiraiya replied, only for Naruto to frown and narrow his eyes. Aside from tree walking, nothing. He was too busy being Sasuke's bitch to teach me or that pink-haired brat anything. He also said I wasn't worth his time and didn't have what it takes to be a shinobi and that our leader only made me one out of pity. He answered and sees Jiraiya growl and release a small amount of ki around the area, but then stopped and an evil grin appeared on his face. Don't sweat it, Naruto. After the exams are over, I'll take you on as my apprentice like I did your old man, even if you don't make Chunin this time. Also, how far can you go when using the Hiraishin no Jutsu? The Toad Sage asks, causing Mei's eyes widen in shock and awe. Why, you know the Hiraishin too? She asks and Naruto nods. Yes, I do, but not to my dad's level. The farthest I can go is 50 miles per hour. And I can only use 4 kunai at a time. Last time I tried to use more than 4, I almost threw up my stomach. He mumbles while Q, who was in fox form, snickers. Jiraiya's jaw dropped at this, but then a huge grin appears on his face. Man, Gaki, you are full of surprises. I knew Sensei was helping you with your skills when you were younger, but damn. Well, I should get going. You and your fiancé meet me at Training Ground 26. It's the one with the huge waterfall and Lake Yane. He says and disappears in a puff of smoke. Mei then walks over to Naruto and smiles. I have to go to Naruto or else my bodyguards will get worried. I'll be at the Golden Leaf Hotel. She replies, getting a nod from Naruto. Mei then wraps her arms around his neck and kisses him fully on the lips for a few minutes and then ends it with Naruto just staring at her. She giggles and disappears in a swirl of water. Q leaps off Naruto's head and morphs into her human form, wearing a black shirt and red pants, and started to stare at a dazed Naruto and sighs. She then grabs his cheeks and stretches them out until Naruto cries out in pain. Itai. Q, what's wrong with you? He cried out, rubbing his sore cheeks while she glares at him and huffs, crossing her arms against her chest. You were in a daze, Baka. Anyways, it's getting dark, I'm hungry and tired, and you promised to sleep with me while I'm in my human form. She said with a cheeky grin on her face while Naruto groaned. Fine, Q-chan, but don't try anything funny. He said in a playful tone while her grin grew. And if I do? She asks, but eeps when he pulls her against his body. I'll give you a reason to watch your backside, you sly vixen. He growled in her ear and squeezed her. She squeaks and frees herself from his grip, glaring at the grinning blonde. Keep your hands off me or I'll make you regret it, you pervert. She growled, showing off her canines, but Naruto just smirks at her. I'll try, Q-chan, but you know how my hands wander while I'm sleeping. He says, making her twitch. He then walks over to her and again wraps his arms around her and kisses her on the lips for a while. She then looks at him and smiles a little. Can I at least cope a feel, Q-chan? I know you like it when I massage your cheeks. He says in a husky tone, causing her to grumble but gives in. Fine, but I want to give you something in return. She says, and he blinks for a while until she leans into his ear and whispers something into his ear. Naruto's eyes widen and a tint of pink appears on his face while she giggles and licks her lips. She sees the look of shock on his face and she grabs his hand and shunshes them to his mother's apartment. Midnight, Naruto's bedroom. Naruto and Q were engaging into a tongue battle while in their underwear on the bed. Naruto was wearing a pair of black boxers while Q was wearing a red bra and panties and was on top of him. After 5 minutes of tongue wrestling, they stop for air, panting heavily. Q grins evilly at the blonde whose eyes widen but return to normal. So are you ready to do that to me, Q-chan? He asks while she nods and giggles pervertedly as she watches the tent in his boxers grows. Oh, I'm gonna enjoy this, Naruto-kun, she says and grinds her waist against his friend, getting a groan from Naruto. Not as much as I am, you horny vixen, he says while her grin became bigger. After doing that, he pulls her panties back on her, his anatomy in his boxers, and wraps his hands around her waist and kisses her neck. Naruto, you jerk. You better be lucky I'm your mate or I'd be castrating you. She mumbles and turns around to sit on his lap. Naruto couldn't help but chuckle and starts to kiss her jawline and neck. They lay back on the bed with Naruto on top of her, still kissing her neck. He then moves down to her stomach and starts to kiss and lick her navel, making her giggle. Naruto does that for a while, then make his way back to kissing her lips. After all that, they snuggle against each other with Q purring on the crook of his neck while Naruto rubs her bare back. Good night, Naru-kun, she mumbles and goes back to sleep. Good night, Q-heim, he says and rests his chin on top of her head. For the last 2 months, Naruto spent his time training with his Kyofu godfather, and Finesse. Jiraiya helped him with Fuinjutsu, and also taught Naruto some of his personal ones like the Hari Jizo, Needle Guardian, and Yomi Numa, Swamp of the Underworld. He also helped Naruto with the Rasengan, and to his shock, Naruto managed to master it in a week. Mei also helped him with his Yoden element and taught him a few Suden Jutsu. For the rest of the 2nd month, Naruto worked on his mother's Kenjutsu and Taijutsu style. 2 months later, Chunin Exam Stadium. In the cage booth, the Hokage, and Kazekage Orochimaru in disguise were sitting and waiting for crowd to settle down. The genin that didn't make it to the finals were sitting with the crowd. I wonder where Sasuke-kun and Naruto are. They're not here with the other finalists. Ino replies while Sakura scoffs. Who cares about that blonde baka? He's nothing compared to Sasuke-kun and Neji and their geniuses, she said, not caring if the Hyuga killed Naruto or not in the finals. Ino looks at Sakura in shock. Sakura, he's your teammate. I know he's not as smart as Sasuke-kun, but have some faith in him, Ino said, and Choji nods while eating a bag of chips. Shikamaru looks around and frowns when he doesn't Naruto or Sasuke. Troublesome, those two are missing, and so is that Doku guy. Stop looking around, kid, and face the audience. In this main tournament, you guys are the stars, said a Senbon chewing Junin named Genma. At the Hokage booth, a Junin appears next to Sarutobi and whispers into his ear. Hokage-sama, Naruto Uzumaki and Sasuke Uchiha still haven't showed up yet. What do we do? He asks. Then Sarutobi looked out of the corner of his eye to see Mei and 2 of her bodyguards coming up. Don't worry, I am sure that Naruto Uzumaki is fine, but keep a lookout for Sasuke Uchiha, he says, getting a nod from the Junin who shuns away. Mei sits down next to the Hokage with her guards flanking her. Hello, Mizukage Dono, I trust that the long journey was not too long, he asks with a smile, and she smirked. Not at all, Hokage Dono. Hello, Kazekage Dono. The Kazekage nodded his head in respect to her, but inside, Orochimaru was panicking about her presence. Curses. Another cage is here. I might have to cancel the invasion. I can't take on both Sarutobi and the Mizukage, he thought in his mind. Sarutobi turns his head to Mei and whispers. Mei-san, do you know where Naruto is? She smiles at him and says. Don't worry. He's just preparing for a flashy entrance. Sarutobi chuckles at her response. Just like his father. Now then, he then stands up while the crowd gets quiet. Thank you, everyone for coming to Konoha's Chunin exams. We will now start the main tournament matches between the 8 participants who made it through the preliminaries. Please stay and watch until the end. The Kazekage then spoke up as Hiruzen started to sit down. If it's 8, then 2 appear to be missing. Sarutobi said nothing, and while that happened, Genma pulled out a piece of paper. There's something I would like to tell you before the matches, look at this. Everyone peered at the matches to see that it was even. There are some minor changes to the tournament, so check again who you are fighting. Shikamaru thought, I had an extra match, did that Dosu guy forfeit? Gaara's hand began to twitch as he waited and said, okay, this is the finals, the secrecy is different, but the same rules from the prelims still apply, got it? Now will Naruto Uzumaki and Neji Hyuga step forward? Neji stepped forward with a smug look on his face, and suddenly a swirl of water, wind, and ice dance around the arena, shocking everyone but Mei, who was smiling under her hat. After that, a hooded figure wearing a dark blue cloak appeared in the middle of the whirlwind, and then it died down. Genma looks at the figure, who grabs the cloak and flings it off, shocking everyone in the stadium. It was Naruto Uzumaki, but what shocked everyone was his appearance. He was now 5 feet 6, wearing a dark blue long-sleeved jacket with pockets on it and a silver line going down the sleeves. He also wore black Anbu-styled pants with a silver line going down the middle and Anbu-styled sandals that stopped below his knees. He also wore a black muscle shirt that hugged his body and wore it like a second skin, and it showed off his chest and abs. On the back of his jacket was the picture of the Kyuubi in a crouching position, as well as the 5 elemental kanji for water, wind, lightning, fire, and earth. He also had black fingerless gloves on, and they had metal plates on them. He also had crimson highlights in his bangs. Strapped to his back was a sword with a red hilt, gold guard, and a black sheath. It was Naruto's mother's sword, the dragon sword, and on his right hip, he had another katana strapped. It had a deep blue hilt, white diamond-shaped patterns that has a white diamond on the end of it. The guard was black and carved in the form of a hydra coiling around the blade. It was in a black and red sheath that had a white dragon wrapped around it with its maw opened. It was the Shinken Akuhei. Around his neck was what looked like a Magatama jewel that was attached to a necklace, Eye of the Dragon from Ninja Gaiden. Oh my god, that's Naruto! Ino shouted out, while Sakura couldn't believe that this was Naruto and thought that it had to be a trick. Sarutobi chuckles at this. Most of the girls, both civilian and Kunoichi, were blushing at the new and improved blonde Genin. Tenten's cheeks were red and she couldn't help but admire his swords. Tamari was also blushing and couldn't help but look at his chest and abs. Whoa, he went from shrimpy to hottie in less than 2 months. I wonder if I can get him on a date after this. She said to herself while her cheeks burned red. Shikamaru's eyes were wide as well, but he chuckles and mutters, troublesome blondes. Gaara looks at him too, but had a feeling that this blonde kid from the exams was dangerous, and smiles darkly. Perhaps you'll be the one I prove my existence to, Uzumaki. He thought, but was wondering why Shikao was quiet. Naruto looks at Genma and grins. Am I late, Proctor-san? Naruto asks while the Junin chuckles and shakes his head. No. Actually, you're just in time for your match against Neji Hyuga. He says while the blonde nods. Good. So can we get started? I have a Chunin flak jacket with my name on it and a pricks to kick. He says, ignoring the glare Neji was giving him. Genma nods and looks at the other Genin. The rest of you go to the stadium and wait for your match. He said as they walked away. One moment, Proctor. Oi, Tamari-san. He yells out, getting her attention. He then removes his swords from his back and right hip and holds them out to her. Would you mind holding these for me? He asks, getting a nod from her, and he hands them to her. Thank you, beautiful. He replies, making her blush. She then walks over to the stairs quickly while Naruto chuckles. I'm definitely going on a date with her. He says to himself, but then looks back at Neji. In the stadium, Izumo and Kotetsu look at the blonde. This ought to be good. I wonder how strong the kid got in 2 months. Izumo wondered while Kotetsu smiles. Who knows? But the question is, can he beat Neji Hyuga, who's considered a prodigy in the Hyuga clan? Kotetsu replies. This should be good. Kiba says while Hinata clutches her chest. Naruto-kun. She says quietly. So the Baka changed his clothes. So what? He's still gonna lose. Sakura says and Ino glares at her former friend. Some teammate you or Sakura. Naruto may be the dead last but at least he's in the finals so shut up. Ino replies while the pink-haired girl looks at Ino in shock but then turns away from her. Hiyashi and his daughter, Hanabi were also watching the fight. Watch closely Hanabi, there isn't another Hyuga whose blood is stronger than Neji's. He says getting a nod from his daughter. Meanwhile as Genma moved back so he didn't get caught in the crossfire. Neji decides to speak up with an arrogant tone. So you've changed your wardrobe, facial appearance, and you now have 2 swords that I doubt you could use. That won't save you though because fate has declared me the victor of the tournament. He says waiting for the blonde to lash out at him. Naruto just stands there with his hands in his pockets and just glares at the Hyuga. He then removes his hands from his pockets and tilts his neck a few times, getting a few crack noises out. He then breathes in and out and looks at Neji like he's a short-minded fool. Neji raises an eyebrow at Naruto. I suggest you get ready to admit defeat Uzumaki. I have fate on my side and no one can defy fate. He says. Naruto then decides to speak up. Neji, do me a favor and shut the up. He said, getting a gasp from everyone while Neji twitches. There is no such thing as fate. It's only an illusion that weak, ignorant, and pompous fools like you use because you don't have the strength or the balls to defy it. He said while Neji growls at the blonde and gets into a Juken stance. I'd pick my next words carefully, you fool. They may be your last. He says and activates his Byakugan. Naruto smirks at the Hyuga prodigy and speaks up. Oh, shut up, pale eyes, and get ready to have your kicked. He says and leaps back performing a few hand seals. Kurigakur no Jutsu. He says and suddenly, a white mist appears around the stadium, making Naruto's image vanish in the mist while Neji frowns and looks around. So you know a jutsu. Big deal, it won't save you from my eyes. He says but hears no response from the blonde. The mist gets thicker and Neji gets frustrated because his eyes can't seem to trace Naruto. What's the matter, dead last? Can't face me like a true shinobi. He taunts but his eyes widen and he is a barrage of shuriken move past his head. He gets up and looks around for Naruto. Come out and face your fate, loser. He yells while Naruto, who was in the mist, grins and moves his right arm forward, pointing his index and middle finger at the Hyuga. Raiden. Byakurai, he says while his fingers glow and a small orb appears with static electricity. When that happens, a beam of white lightning shoots towards Neji's back. The Hyuga senses something behind him and that was a bolt of lightning coming straight at him. He manages to dodge it but his cheek gets grazed by it, making the Hyuga wince from the pain. Damn it. If that attack had hit me it would've. He started to think only for Naruto to appear on his right with his fist back and swings at Neji. He gets ready to perform a palm strike to the blonde's chest only for Naruto to sidestep and grab the Hyuga's wrist. He twists it slightly and delivers a chakra-enhanced kick to his chest, sending the Hyuga flying through the mist. Neji manages to flip in mid-air and lands on the ground, skidding back a couple of feet and coughs a few times. Lucky shot. He mutters. I heard that, girly boy. Naruto says in the mist. The mist suddenly clears and Naruto is seen twirling a Fuma shuriken in his hands at a slow pace. Neji just frowns and charges. Naruto smirks at the prick and twirls the windmill even faster until it's a spinning buzz saw. He then tosses it at Neji full force. The Hyuga leaps over it and lands on the ground again and charges at Naruto full speed. Naruto's eyes widen and before he could do anything, Neji strikes him in the chest with a palm strike and he gasps out, shocking everyone. Ha! Told ya he'd lose. Sakura says. Neji smirks at the shock expression on Naruto's face but his smirk becomes a frown when Naruto says one word. Fool. He then bursts into water, surprising and shocking Neji. What? A Mizu Bunshin water clone. When did he? He cries out but then the windmill shuriken turned into a puff of smoke, revealing Naruto in the air with another spinning windmill in his hands. Hey Neji. Naruto yells out and the prick turns around to see Naruto with another windmill shuriken in his hands. Said blonde then throws it and performs a few seals. Kage Fuma Shuriken no Jutsu. He cries out and the one Fuma Shuriken becomes 20, but Naruto isn't finished there. Fuden. Senpuken, wind release. Hurricane fist, he says, and Naruto punches his fist out and releases a gust of wind that increases the speed of the shurikens that were going for a shocked Neji. Whoa, he knows a wind jutsu. Now I really want that date with him. She says to herself and hugs his swords to her boy. Tenten was glaring at the Suna Kunoichi because she wanted to hold those swords. The other Genin's eyes widen at what Naruto just did. Kiba then shouts out. Yeah, Naruto. Neji curses and his body glows for a while. He then spins really fast, creating a spinning chakra shield, Kaden. Heavenly rotation. He cries out and the shuriken are deflected. Hiyashi had a look of surprise and awe as did Hanabi. T2-san, that was. I know. Such skill is wasted on the branch family. He says in a low tone. Naruto lands on the ground as the Kaden dies down. Neji then stops spinning and smirks at Naruto. You should be honored. It's not every day that I use my trump card on a mere commoner. He replies. While Naruto just looks at him and scratches his head. That was your trump card. Pretty lame if you ask me. He said, getting a face fault and sweat drop from most of the ninja and civilians. Hiyashi growls at the blonde for insulting his clan's most powerful technique. Wow, is this dude delusional or what? Sarutobi couldn't help but chuckle. Leave it to Naruto to insult a clan like the Hyugas. Asuma and Kurenai hear this also and Asuma smirks at the blonde's actions. That kid must have balls of steel to insult one of the strongest clans in Konoha. He says and Kurenai nods with him. Neji now was fuming. How dare this nobody insult my technique? He'll pay. Neji once again gets into the Juken stance. I'm done holding back Uzumaki. Now I'll show you the true power of the Hyuga clan. He says while Naruto looks at the ninja in mock shock. You were holding back. Wow, and here I thought you were a spoiled brat with the stick up your. He said while Neji growls. Shut up, you peasant. He yells and charges at Naruto. Naruto's expression hardens and he gets into a fighting stance with his legs slightly spread apart, his right arm back into a fist and his left arm out with the palm opened. When Neji is a few feet near him, Naruto swings his right arm at Neji, who dodges to the left and performs a sweep kick at his legs. Naruto leaps over the move and lands on the other side. He then dodges two of Neji's palm strikes and performs a roundhouse kick at Neji, who blocks it with his arms, but Naruto adds more force to the attack, breaking Neji's defense. Seeing this, Naruto spins and knees Neji in the gut, making the Hyuga gasp out as Naruto performs another knee strike, then grabs Neji by his jacket, flips him over, and slams him onto the ground hard. The Hyuga winces in pain, but then his eyes widen when he sees Naruto lift his right leg up into the air and brings it down fast and hard. He barely manages to roll out of the way as Naruto's foot comes down and makes an impact with the ground. After rolling out the way, Neji watches as Naruto removes his foot from the small crater his foot made and just stares at Neji. He then pulls one kunai from each hand and throws them at Neji, who pulls out one and deflects them. Two shadow clones flank Neji's side with a kodachi in their hand and swing at Neji's sides. The Hyuga jumps into the air and another clone appears performing a drop kick. Neji manages to tilt his body back as the clone passes him and he lands on the ground, only to get an uppercut to the jaw by the real Naruto, who leaps into the air, grabs Neji by the collar of his jacket and arm. As they went down, Naruto slams Neji into the ground while said Hyuga coughs up a little blood. Naruto's not finished and he picks the Hyuga up and punches him hard in the stomach 3 times, knees him into gut, his fist back, and socks him hard into the jaw, sending the Hyuga sprawling to the ground, skidding backwards, and stops a few feet from Naruto. Before Neji could do anything, his ankle was grabbed by Naruto and he was lifted off the ground, only to get slammed on his back on the opposite side. Naruto does 3 times and then spins around fast with Neji spinning also. He then flings Neji into the wall and hits it hard, leaving an imprint of his body onto the wall while he slides down. Naruto then vanishes and appears before Neji and grabs him by the collar of his jacket and flings him back into the middle of the field. Naruto then slowly walks towards the Hyuga who was struggling to get back on his feet. That when Naruto once again grabbed him by the collar again and pulled him to his eye level. So are you gonna apologize to Hinata or do I still have to make an example out of you? He asks and Neji spits blood and saliva on Naruto's face shocking everyone. Naruto on the other hand rears his left fist back and socks him across the jaw hard and proceeds to unleash a barrage of punches on Neji's face, making the boys jerk back. To say everyone was shocked would be an understatement. Neji Hyuga, last year's Rookie of the Year and member of the Hyuga clan was getting his handed to him by Naruto Uzumaki, the dead last. Man, he's beating the crap out of that Neji kid. Hopefully the blonde doesn't kill the kid with those punches. Genma mutters and his face twitched a little when he saw a couple of teeth fly out Neji's mouth. Choji dropped his bag of chips and couldn't help but keep looking at the beating Naruto was giving to Neji. Remind me to never piss Naruto off. He says to Ino who just nods without looking at him. Naruto however continues with the assault but the pauses when he sees Neji's bloody face. He then performs an uppercut that sends the prodigy flying upwards in mid-air. After that, Naruto runs towards one of the walls and runs up it. He then adds chakra to his leg and uses it to launch himself off the wall at high speed towards Neji and kicks him back into the same spot, making the crater bigger and once again he slides down the wall. Neji wobbly get up but the feels a fist buried into his stomach and hunches over in pain, coughing out saliva. Naruto then grabs Neji by his hair and drags him across the field and onto the middle of the arena and drops him. He then stomps on the Hyuga's hand, breaking the knuckles and a few bones. Neji screams out in pain while Naruto releases his foot from the Hyuga's now broken hand. Neji rolls away clutching his now broken hand. While Naruto just glares at the boy. Pathetic. I expected you to be stronger than this. Boy was I stupid in getting worked up with kicking your. So much for the Hyuga clan being the strongest clan in Konoha if their prodigy is this weak and pathetic. But do you know the most embarrassing part? You got the shit beat out of you by the dead last. Ironic isn't it? Your clan always preaches about how their bloodline makes them invincible. Such foolishness and arrogance is not needed in our ranks. Do you honestly think that your all-seeing eye and Juken style is enough to beat your opponent? Please, I can think of 20 different ways to beat you and your bloodline without breaking a sweat. He says in a cold tone. Hiyashi clenches his fist at the boy. Neji gets up and glares at Naruto. Don't get up Neji, you can't fight me anymore now that your hand is broken, unless you know one-handed seals which I doubt since you probably didn't even bother to learn more than your clan techniques. Am I right or what? He asks only to get silence and he chuckles. Kami, you bloodline users are stupid. What would have happened if you faced an enemy who knew how to fight your Byakugan and the Juken? You would have had to retreat or you would have died and had your eyes and balls taken to be examined and probably produce a new clan of Hyugas who aren't in Konoha. He replied. Shut up. Who are you to tell me to expand my horizon? I am a Hyuga and there's no one else in this village or any other that is stronger than you, pow. Neji got punched right in the face by Naruto. The sound of cartilage breaking is heard and he tumbles away. He stops and clutches his face in pain and lets out a muffled scream. Shut the up you piece of shit. You have no room to talk about whose clan is stronger because if your clan was so strong, then why haven't any of them become Hokage yet? He yelled out. Asuma had to bite down on his lip to hold in a laugh. I take what I said back. His balls must be made of steel. A clan who enslaves their own family and treats them like pets is not a clan. Even the Uchiha clan didn't have slaves, which is very shocking to me. So tell me Neji, what's it like to kiss the of a bunch of old farts who can't even shit right without assistance? He asks while Neji gets up, holding his nose but by the scrunching of his face he was pissed. Sarutobi lets out a cough to prevent himself from laughing. Mei looks at him and smiles. Is everything alright Sarutobi-san? She asks while he nods. Yes, I am just a little fit. The Kage chuckles at what he was hearing. Your genin skills are impressive Sarutobi-san. I thought he was the dead last of the academy. Sarutobi snorts. Deception is a shinobi's most deadliest weapon Kage-sama. He nods and looks back at the fight. Naruto then spits on the ground and looks back at the pissed off Hyuga. What's wrong, Neji? Are you pissed because I insulted your clan? Or is it because you are the pet who can't do nothing more but respond to your master's call like a dog? He says and senses the key coming from the boy. Proctor, call the match. He can't fight me with a broken hand or cast jutsu. If not, I'll do more than break his hand and nose. He says and cracks his knuckles. Genma moves between them. The winner is Naruto Uzumaki. He says while the crowd cheers, but as soon as Naruto walks away he hears a roar filled with hate and rage and turns his head to see a pissed off Neji charging at him. I'll kill you. Neji screamed out with his Byakugan springing to life. Gemna tried to stop him but the Hyuga was too quick. Naruto vanishes and kicks the enraged Hyuga in the side of the head so hard that he is sent into a tree and collapses into unconsciousness. When the protector announces the winner, Hyuga, you limp away to the medical ward, not attack the victor. He says and vanishes into a swirl of leaves into the other genin who were in the finals. Naruto walks towards a blushing Tamari and stops in front of her. May I have my swords back, Tamari-chan? He asks while grinning at her. She nods with a blush on her face and hands them back to him. Thank you and I wish you luck in your match. He says as he straps his words back on. Thank you Naruto-ku, I mean San. She said as her blush increases. Naruto just chuckles and walks away from her and back to the other genin grinning. Hey Shika, Shino, how's it going? He asks and the Nara decides to speak up. Okay Naruto, I know you probably have the answer but what the hell happened to you? He asks and Shino nods. Yes Uzumaki-san, I too am curious about your new appearance and skills. The Aburame asks. Naruto smirks and replies. Come on now Shika, I know you're lazy but not stupid, and Shino, isn't deception all part of the shinobi way? Naruto asks and Shino raised both eyebrows. I understand now. I apologize if I insulted you in any way Uzumaki-san. He says and Naruto rolls his eyes. Shino, you don't have to call me Uzumaki-san. I prefer Naruto. He says while the bug user nods. Very well. He says while Shika chuckles. Man Naruto, you are so troublesome. He says while the blonde grins. Oh shut up lazy. You think everything is troublesome. No wonder all the females in your clan kick your. He said while Shikamaru twitches. Speaking of females, when do you plan on asking out Ino? He asks out loud, getting a blush from Ino and from the shadow user. Don't worry dude, I'm not going to steal her from you. I'm more interested into Tamari. He says while the wind user looks at him, turns red and sputters while he winks at her. Mei hears this and a smirk appears on her face. It appears Naru-kun has already found another female to join his harem. She's not bad looking, but if anyone is bearing his first child, it's me, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. She thought while Naruto, Q, Tenten, Tamari, and Anko sneeze. Someone's talking about me. Probably Mei-chan thinking about our honeymoon. He says to himself. Meanwhile in the cage booth Raida appears near Sarutobi. Hokage-sama, Sasuke Uchiha still hasn't showed up for his match. What should we do? He asks. Sarutobi sighs in frustration. Tell Genma the Sasuke Uchiha is disqualified. He says and the cage spoke, why not postpone the match? Everyone including the lords from the other nations came to see the Uchiha fight. Raida looks up at the cage, excuse me but someone who doesn't show up on time doesn't have the right to be a chunin. Clan members are not an exception. He says while Mei is right. I agree. If this was a war and the Uchiha's team was late due to his ignorance, then it'll cost not just the current team, but the entire village. Ninja who don't follow the rules have no right to be ninja. She says and Sarutobi agrees. They're right cage dono. I can't show favoritism to anyone, the will be disqualified and that is my final answer. He says while Raida shunshes away to inform Genma. Damn that woman. The invasion has been compromised. I have no choice but to call it off. The cage made a hand sign to call off the attack and Kabuto saw it and just stood there, observing the match. After Genma got the message he announced this. Due to him not being on time, Uchiha Sasuke has been disqualified from the match, making Gaara the winner by default. He replied while the crowd booed at the decision. What? That's not fair. Sakura screamed out while Ino, who covered her ears, smacked the girl upside the head. Shut up, Sakura, Ino yelled. Naruto smirks at this. So much for the almighty Uchiha clan, he says, and Shikamaru mutters troublesome again. Skipping the other matches. After Shikamaru gave up his fight, he walked back up to the arena glaring at a grinning Naruto. If you ever do pull something like that again, Naruto, I'll kill you, he said in a dark tone while the blonde shrugs. Not my fault you're lazy, he says, and then appears next to Temari, who eeps. Naruto chuckles and puts an arm around the blonde Kunoichi, who blushes when she felt the muscles in his arms. Great match, Temari-chan. Too bad you didn't clock Shika in the head with your fan. Well, it's time for my match, he says, but then whispers into her ear. I'll help your brother defeat his inner demon, he says, and her eye widened, but before she could say anything he vanished in a swirl of water and ends up in the arena with his arms crossed. Gaara does the same with his sand and appears a few feet away from Naruto and smiles a smile filled with bloodlust. I see you've gotten stronger, Uzumaki. Perhaps your blood will satisfy my mother, he says in a monotone voice while Naruto smirks. Sorry, Tanuki, but your mother won't be tasting my blood today. Plus, the only one who gets to taste any part of me is my water goddess, he says with a smile on his face. Mei hears this and blushes when Naruto calls her that. Jinam was about to start the match until they were interrupted by swirling leaves, and in the middle of it were Sasuke and Kakashi. Naruto narrows his eyes at the man and at Sasuke. Yo, did we make it? Kakashi asks with an eye smile while Genma frowns. No, Kakashi, the Uchiha was disqualified, now get off the field, he says, getting a shocked look from Kakashi and a look of anger from Sasuke. What? I can't be disqualified, I'm an Uchiha, the prick yelled while Genma snorts. And your point? Now beat it, kid, or I'll remove you from the field personally. Sasuke sees Gaara and starts to charge at him in anger, but he is knocked out by the Shinken no Akuhi's sheath, courtesy to Naruto, who then tosses the brat at Kakashi, who catches him. Get your butt buddy off the field, Hatake, Naruto says coldly while the Junin shivers from Naruto's words and vanishes into the stadium. Sorry about that, Gaara. It's always the arrogant and weak-minded ones that don't know when to piss off, he says while Gaara nods. Apology accepted, Uzumaki. Shall we begin? He asks while Naruto nods and removes his jacket and swords, revealing his skin-tight shirt which showed his well-toned body. The females minus Sakura blush at this. Mei, however, was licking her lips. If he's this gorgeous now, I can't wait to see what he's like when he's older, she thought, as did the other girls, again minus Sakura. He places Rukin and Shinken no Akuhe on his back and then tosses his jacket to the side, and when it hits the ground, a large crater is created, shocking everyone due to how wide and deep the crater was. Naruto stretches for a while and smirks. Let's get started, Gaara, he says, and flares his chakra, which was a dark blue color. Gaara nods and the cork on his guard pops off and his sand swirls around the sociopath like a snake. Naruto grins and leaps back when a sand tendril hits the area he was at. Naruto then pulls out Shinken no Akuhe and twirls the blade around for a while, then gets into a kenjutsu stance with his sword in a thrusting position. He then charges at the red-haired genin and does a horizontal slash at his head, only for a wall of sand to block the attack, and Naruto jumps back when another tendril tries to strike him. Naruto then plants the blade on the ground and performs a few hand seals. Kaden. Karyuenden. Fire release. Dragon flame bomb, he says, and shoots red-hot flames that was in the form of a dragon at Gaara. Another wall of sand appears in front of Gaara while the flames hit the sand, turning it into glass. Naruto then sheathes his sword, jumps into the air, and performs more hand seals. Sweden. Teppadama, water release. Water bullets, he says, and fires 3 water bullets from above Gaara's head, but again the sand protects him. Naruto lands and backflips a couple of times to avoid being crushed and continues to fire water bullets at Gaara, who starts to get bored at him firing water bullets at him. Naruto performs a few more seals and yells out, Sweden. Suyakuharyuden, water release. Water Hydra missile. He says and focuses his chakra into the ground. The ground trembles and suddenly, a large amount of water heads rises from the ground and morphs into a Herta with glowing red eyes, and it hisses at Gaara before charging at the red head. A dome of sand surrounds him, and when the water hydra makes contact, it explodes into water and soaks the field. Sarutobi's eyes widen in amazement when he saw the technique. In the stands, the genin saw this and their jaws dropped. Sasuke grits his teeth in frustration because he wasn't able to copy it for some reason. Damn it, why can't I copy that jutsu? He thought furiously while Kakashi wondered how could he do a jutsu with his level of chakra control. Wow, what an. When the water dissolves, Naruto sees the sand drop and Gaara was unharmed. Is that it, Uzumaki? I expected more from you. He says and holds his hand out to have his sand constrict, but when the sand rises it falls back down. Gaara's eyes widen in shock. What the? He says and tries again only for it to do the same thing. Naruto chuckles and speaks up. You should know, Gaara, that when sand makes contacts with water it becomes soluble and results in becoming clump of mud. Its weakness is water and it needs to be dry in order to move freely, but that also means. He starts to say, but he then appears beside Gaara, delivering a jaw-shattering punch to his face and send Gaara flying into the wall, resulting in a crater appearing on a wall and Gaara falling to the ground groaning while his face cracked and pieces of sand fell from his face. You're nothing more than a sandbag waiting to get ripped apart. I know about your sand armor being stronger than steel, but I wonder. Can you keep it intact? He says and charges at Gaara, who growls out and sends a wave of dry sand at Naruto, who leaps over it and shoots out a jet stream of water from his mouth, making the sand soggy, and then fires a second stream at Gaara's Suna no Yoroi, sand armor. The water makes contact with Gaara's armor, which turns dark brown, and he struggles to sit up because the water made it heavy. Here's another chemistry lesson, Gaara. What do you get when you add wet moldy sand with lightning? He asks as he focuses yellow lightning chakra into both hands and places them on the wet sand. You get a French fried redhead. Raiden. Raiko Nagashi, lightning release, lightning current. He yells out and a huge current of electricity spreads throughout the ground. Gaara screamed in pain as Naruto sent the currents to the gourd on his back and electricity coursed through the Suna Jinchuriki's body. The boy fell to the ground, panting with smoke rising out of certain parts of his body. Naruto watches as Gaara starts to get up slowly and glare at Naruto. I will not lose. I will prove my existence. He says, and his chakra spikes while Naruto curses. He then appears in front of Gaara and grabs the Suna Nin by the throat. Sorry, Gaara, but I can't let you endanger the lives of these people. He says and adds pressure to the redhead's neck, causing Gaara to struggle for air, and he says and his fingertips on his right hand glow yellow. It's over, Gaara. Gogyo Fuin. He cries out and slams his hand into Gaara's stomach, causing the sand user to cry out in pain and then enter the world of darkness. Gaara's unconscious form falls over, but the blonde catches him in his arm. Maybe now you can regain what you lost, Sabaku no Gaara. He says and sets the Suna down gently. He then lets out a sigh of relief and wipes a bead of sweat from his brow. Man, that was close. I need to work on that Suiten jutsu though. It took too long for me to pull that water from the ground. Naruto says and stretches his arms. Again, everyone was shocked that Naruto beat someone even Lee couldn't beat. Orochimaru was seething at the fact that this boy had ruined his plans. Naruto looks at Genma and speaks up. Well, are you gonna call the match? He asks and Genma nods. Winner. Naruto Uzumaki. He says while the blonde does a victory sign while grinning. Mei was smiling, as was Sarutobi. Well done, Naruto. Your parents would be proud. He said quietly. That was when the crowd cheered very loudly. Kiba jumped up shouting. Woo. All right, Naruto. The Inuzuka cried out. Choji's eyes were wide and Ino's mouth was hanging open. Unbelievable. Naruto just beat Neji and that Gaara guy. She said while Choji nods. Yosh. Naruto's flames of youth were amazing. He yells out while Lee was happy yet a little jealous that Naruto had beaten his rival and the kid from Suna. Sasuke was pissed beyond belief that Naruto, the dead last, had beaten someone of Gaara's level, and what frustrated him even more was that he couldn't copy his jutsu. Why couldn't I copy his jutsu? How could the Dobi, the dead last of the academy, get so strong? I should have that power. I need it more than he does. Sasuke rants into his mind while Kakashi wondered who trained Naruto and where he learned that water jutsu from. He'll just ask him and have him teach Sasuke that move. Wow, what a jerk. Sakura thought she was dreaming that the baka on their team beat that monster. There's no way Naruto's that strong. This has to be a trick, she says to herself. Azumo and Kaotatsu were smirking. Damn, first he beats Neji like a rag doll, and then he beats the kid from Suna. The kid has come a long way. He should be promoted to Chunin after this. Azumo says while Kaotatsu snorts. Chunin. The kid should be a Tokubetsu Jonin. His strategy and tactics were at least mid-Junin level, as was his stealth. Hell, he even hanged himself into a Fuma Shuriken and Kawarimide with a Mizu Bushin. That takes a lot of skill to pull off. Kaotatsu said. Naruto was about to walk back to the ring until a white-haired man wearing a kabuki outfit appeared in front of Naruto with a grin on his face. Yo Gaki, that was one hell of a match, he said while the blonde smirked. Thanks sensei, he says while a deadpan look appears on Jiraiya's face. Something tells me that this is a once-in-a-lifetime event, he says while Naruto frowns at him. Yes it is, you should know why, he says while Jiraiya groans. Damn it Gaki, are you still mad at what happened? He asks with a peeved look on his face. You bet your perverted books I'm still mad, Ero Sennin. You walked in on Mei-chan when she was in her underwear. He yells at his godfather while everyone's sweat drops at this. Mei however tilted her hat down to hide the blush on her face while Hiruzen looks at Mei and a smirk appears on his face. Care to explain Mizukage Dono? He whispers. Shut up you old monkey. She mumbles while Hiruzen chuckles. Damn it Gaki, how many times do I have to tell you that I thought you were in the room? He yells in his face. I told you I was in the room on the right side, not left, Gamma Baka. He yells back. I am not a baka, you blonde-haired brat. No, you're a super arrow baka who needs to get his brain checked. Naruto yells back. What did you say? He yells. You heard me, or are you deaf too? He yells back and they growl at each other. Ino blinks at the scene and then speaks. Who's he? She asks and Guy speaks up. That is Jiraiya, the Gamma Sennin who was taught by the Sandaime along with Tsunade-sama and Orochimaru. Jiraiya-sama was also the one who trained the Yondaime Hokage. He may look odd but he's as strong as a cage, he says in a serious tone. Sasuke frowns and clenches his fist. How the hell does the Dobi know him? He snarled while Guy ignored his attitude but answers. Who knows? He says. Orochimaru eyes narrow in frustration at the situation. God damn it, Jiraiya is here too. It's bad enough that the Mizukage is here, but now that fool is here too. Curses. Just you wait, Sarutobi, I will kill you one of these days, he thought. Genma coughs so that he can get their attention. Not to be rude or anything, Jiraiya-sama, but we still need to continue the matches, he says while Jiraiya rubs the back of his head and grins sheepishly. Sorry about that. He then picks up Gaara's unconscious form and looks at Naruto. I'll deal with fixing up the kid's seal, he says and vanishes with the container of Shukaku. Tamari had just came down from the stairs and then says. I forfeit, Proctor. This is one match I know I can't win due to the fact that you beat my brother, she says while Naruto grins. Oh come now Tamari-chan. I won't rough you up that much unless you want me to, he says while wiggling his eyebrow while the blonde Kunoichi was blushing and looking at the ground. You pervert, she mumbles while he snickers at her. Winner of the Chunin exams, Naruto Uzumaki, Genma says, getting a loud cheer from the crowd. Naruto smirks while wondering about the irony that he, the village pariah, was now gaining respect from the people who used to despise him. I'm proud of you, Naruto-kun. Looks like I'll have to reward you for winning, she says in a husky tone while Naruto blushes and Q giggles. Meanwhile, the Hokage, Mizukage, and Kazekage appeared on the field, as do the Genin minus Gaara, who stand before the three cages. Thank you all for participating in this exam. Now will the following please approach me as I call them. Sabaku no Tamari, Shikamaru Nara, and Naruto Uzumaki. He says. Sasuke frowned and brooded that his name wasn't called and the dead last's was. The three called stepped forward. Tamari had a small smile, Shikamaru had a lazy look, and Naruto had a large grin on his face. Mei had to hold in hers while Sarutobi spoke up. You three have shown extraordinary skills in tactical expertise, strategy, cunning and trickery. Also used the terrain to your advantage, then exploited your opponent's weaknesses. Therefore it is my honor and pride to dub you three as Chunin. Congratulations, he said. Mei handed them their certificates and their flak jackets and she shook each one of their hands in respect. Naruto winked at Mei, who also winks back at him. Now to the rest of you, don't give up and try to do better next time. This concludes the Chunin exams, we will see all of you in 2 years. He says. The people who came leave from their seats while Shikamaru groans. Troublesome. Now I have to do more work. He says while Naruto smirks. It's either that or deal with your mom, and if I remember, she knocked you and your dad out of the house with a frying pan because you left the deer's pen open. He says while the Nara pales. Say, didn't Yoshino-san put you in a coma because you ate one of her pastries? He asks while the Naruto twitches. How should I know? I had amnesia when I woke up from being in it for 2 days. He said while Naruto blinks at him for a while. Dude, it wasn't for 2 days, it was for a week. He says while Shikamaru raises an eyebrow at him. And how would you know? He asks and Naruto snickers. I was there when it happened. I was helping your mom clean deer antlers. He says while the Nara walks away mumbling about blondes being too smart and moms with short fuses. Naruto saw Tamari walk up to him and speak. I still can't believe you beat Gaara like that. She said while Naruto smiles at the blonde. You sound like you were worried about me, Tamari-chan. He says while she crosses her arms against her chest smirking. Yeah, I was fearing for your life. Anyway, what happened to you? You went from a loudmouth shrimp to a hot blonde. She asks while he rubbed the back of his head. Well, he started to say until he heard Sakura screech out his name. Let's take this to the medical ward. Ero Sennin should be done with your brother's new seal. He says and wraps an arm around her waist, making her blush as they Mizu Shunshins to the ward to avoid the Banshee and the Brooder. Medical ward. Jiraiya wipes the sweat that was on his head with his arms, finally finishing making Gaara's new seal. Naruto appears with Tamari behind the sage, who turns around and to see his godson. Hey Gaki, who's she? He asks and Tamari steps forward. I'm Sabaku no Tamari, the daughter of the Kazekage and Gaara's older sister. Is he alright? She asks with concern and walks over to her sleeping brother and panics. Why is he sleeping? If he falls asleep the Shukaku will, she cries out, but Jiraiya places an arm on her shoulder. Relax, I already knew about his sleeping problem. Don't worry, Shukaku won't be bothering him at all. He says and gets up and pops his back. Well, I'm off to get a little R&R, Naruto. I'll see you later. Yeah, he says and disappears in a puff of smoke. Gaara slowly opens his eyes and sees Tamari looking at him with a concerned look on her face. Kankuro had walked in and Naruto explained what happened. Tamari, he asks while she reaches for his hand and places it in hers. The redhead freezes up at first, but when he sees the look of hurt in her eyes he relaxes, getting a small smile from her. Gaara, I'm glad you're not hurt. She says while Gaara looks around and sees Naruto leaned against the wall. Why didn't you kill me, Uzumaki? I failed to prove my existence. I don't deserve to live. Gaara says while a saddened expression appears on Temari's face. Naruto sighs and gets off the wall. Simple, Gaara. 1. Your life was similar to mine, and 2. I didn't want to break your sister's heart. He replied, making Gaara's eye widen. What do you mean? He asks. I'm a container just like you, Gaara. I know what it's like to live a life of hell, but the only difference was that I gained people who cared for me while you were left alone. Am I right? He asks while Gaara just looks at him. You've suffered your whole life, didn't you? No one to care for you or become your friend. You were declared as a monster and abomination by your own people, weren't you? Gaara's eyes widened even more. I would have ended like you if I hadn't met them. Suru Oji, Choji, Shikamaru, Kiba, Akamaru, Mei-chan, Ero Kyofu, Uruka Sensei, the Ichirakus, Q-chan. They saved me from my life of hell. His hair covers his eyes and he talks in a low tone. They are my precious people Gaara, and I won't let you or anyone else, whether they're comrades or not, harm them. If you try to harm them, I'll stop you. He then looks at the Suna Nin with cold slitted eyes. And if have to kill you to protect them, I will. He says, getting a shocked look from Gaara. Why? Why go so far for them? He asks because he was still confused and Naruto's gaze softens, because they're the ones who give me strength. As long as I have them by my side, I can accomplish anything. Gaara, you may not think it, but Temari and Kankuro care about you. They're your family and they want to be there for you, but unless you stop being so cold and distant from them, you'll end up losing them. Naruto says while Gaara looks over at Temari and Kakuro, who look back at their little brother with sympathy in their eyes. Temari increases her grip on Gaara's hand a little and her eyes become glassy. Don't push them away, Gaara. Let them in and I promise that you won't regret it. He says while Gaara thinks about what he said. So he gains his strength from people who are important to him, huh? Perhaps I can too. I may not have as many people as he does, but at least I have Kankuro and Temari. Maybe I'll gain more in the future. Naruto Uzumaki. Thank you, he says and looks at his siblings. Kankuro. Temari. I'm sorry, he says. Tears form around Temari's eyes and she lets go of his hand and pulls her brother into a hug. While sobbing quietly, Gaara's eyes widen at the hug but relaxes and rests his head on her shoulder. Kankuro walks over to them and places his hand on his sister's shoulder and on Gaara's back. Don't sweat it, Gaara. We're family no matter what. He says. A family, huh? I like that, he says with a true smile on his face and falls asleep on his sister's shoulder. Temari places him back down gently and then gets up and walks over to Naruto. She then hugs the blonde Chunin. Thank you, Naruto-kun. Thank you for helping my brother and bringing my family back together. Sei says and hugs him even tighter. Naruto blushes in embarrassment but returns it. You're welcome, Temari-chan, he says. She lets go of him and kisses him on the cheek. Kankuro smirks at this and Naruto rubs the back of his head. Oh, and Kankuro, do us a favor and stop wearing your sister's makeup. People might take it the wrong way and think you're gay. He says with a cheeky grin and shunsins away, leaving a pissed Kankuro and a laughing Temari. Stupid Gaki, it's war paint. He mumbles. Meanwhile, Mei was on the roof of the Golden Leaf Hotel and felt a pair of arms wrap around her waist. She smiles and turns her head to see a smiling Naruto who lets go of her and walks beside her, holding his hand into hers. Congratulations on your promotion, Naruto-kun, she said while he smiles. Thanks. I owe it all to you, my Unabara no Megami, goddess of the sea. He says while a tint of pink appears on her face and tightens her grip on his hand. I just helped you with your training, that's all, Naruto-kun. I didn't do that much, she says, but Naruto leans over and kisses her on the cheek. Yes, you did, Mei-chan, and I'm eternally grateful for your help. He replies while she looks at him with a loving smile on her face. Thank you, Naruto-kun. Your parents would be proud of you. I know I am. I just hope this engagement between us will turn out great. I really want this to work, Naruto-kun, she says, and he smiles at her. It will, Mei-chan. I'm positive it'll work out. I know this seems to be rushed, but I feel like I've known you for a long time. He says, and she nods in agreement. She was about to say something until he saw Kakashi appear looking at Naruto. Naruto, Kakashi said while the blonde just gave Kakashi an icy glare that made him nervous. Mei just looks at him with a blank expression, but on the inside she was furious that this fool interrupted their moment. What do you want, Hatake? Can't you see that I'm talking to the Mizukage right now? He said in a cold tone, making the copy nin flinch but remain stoic. I just came to Tal, he started to say but was cut off. I'm not interested in hearing any of your stupid excuses, nor do I have the patience to deal with your bullshit, so what the hell do you want? He said, making his tone even harsher. Kakashi cringed at the sound of his voice. Where did you learn those jutsu and where did you get those swords? He asks while Naruto's eyes narrowed. That's none of your business. He answers while Kakashi decides to pull rank. I asked you a question, Chunin, now answer it. He ordered, and Naruto's eyes flash red for a moment and was releasing ki on the nin until the Mizukage placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder and speaks. I suggest you leave, Junin. I was in the middle of having a conversation with this young man until you decided to be rude. Mei spoke up while Kakashi gave her a lazy look. With all due respect, Mizukage Dono, I don't have to listen to you because you are not the Kage of this village. He says, but instantly regrets saying it when he feels murderous intent coming from Naruto and Mei. What the air you doing, you idiot? She's a VIP in the village and you dare talk to her like she's a commoner. Are you trying to get us in trouble, you? Naruto snarled and was a few seconds from punching this idiot in the face for talking to his fiancée like that. You shouldn't talk like that in front the Mizukage, Naru. Shut the up, you baka. I'll talk anyway I want, now get the hell out of my sight, you trash, before I dub you as a threat to R and have you arrested, and stop staring at her chest before I beat the shit out of you and get you demoted. The blonde yelled while Kakashi narrowed his eyes at Naruto. What did you call me? He says in a low tone. I called you trash because that's what you are. I'm not gonna tell you again to leave, Hatake. Naruto growled and flexed his hands. Kakashi frowned at the blonde. Naruto, I know you're mad that I didn't train you, but Sasuke, he said, but was interrupted by Mei. Had what it took to be a shinobi and deserved to move up into the ranks. You also said that you won't waste your time with someone who can't even control his own chakra and said he didn't have any talent and shouldn't even be a ninja. Did you not say that, Junin? Mei said while Kakashi paled when he looked at her. How did you? I was in the hospital when I heard you neglect your student. You could have given him a scroll or a few books on how to improve his chakra since you were too lazy and stupid to help a subordinate. You know what? I bet you were hoping that the Hyuga would kill him during the finals. She said while the Junin's eyes widen. And no, I am very disappointed with you, and I am sure the Hokage is too, since I reported to him how insensitive one of his Junin were. He was very displeased with your actions and told me that he will deal with you accordingly. She said with a smirk on his face while Kakashi turned as white as a sheet. He was about to say something else, but Mei snaps her fingers and 4 of her personal Anbu appeared around her and Naruto with their ninjutsus drawn. Leave or I'll consider you a threat to my life and have my Anbu kill you. She said, and Kakashi shunshins away. Mei snaps her fingers again and the Anbu melt back under the roof. Naruto lets out a frustrating sigh and brushes his hair back. Mei sees this and wraps her arms around him and kisses him on the forehead. Are you okay, Naruto-kun? Mei asks him, but he nods. Yeah, I'll be fine. I was 10 seconds from feeding that baka his own teeth. He says while Mei giggles at him. Can you believe that he was ogling you? I swear the next person who looks at you like that will be getting their eyes ripped out of their head. Only I can look at you like that. He says with a cheeky grin on his face and grabs her hand. Mei couldn't help but blush at what he says and was about to say something until an explosion was heard from the main gate, getting their attention. Mei-chan, you head to the Hokage Tower. I'll go check and see what that explosion was. He says and she nods. Okay, but be careful. She says and Naruto nods back and kisses her hand. Naruto shunshins away. Anbu. She called out. The 4 previous Kiri Anbu appeared around her. We're heading to the Hokage Tower. She says, getting a nod from her men who follow her to the Hokage Tower. At the main gate, civilians were running away screaming while 3 three-headed snakes were hissing and demolishing buildings with their tails. Some ninja were escorting the civilians while the others tried to hold them off by throwing kunai shuriken and casting jutsu. Orochimaru and Kabuto were watching this from a tree far away. My invasion may have failed, but that doesn't mean I won't leave Konoha without giving them a farewell gift. He said with a sneer on his face. Kabuto tilts his glasses up and speaks. Should we stay and watch how this occurs, Orochimaru-sama? The medical nin asks. A smirk appears on the hubby's face. As fun as that would be, I have more important matters to attend to. And Kabuto, if you ever get the chance, kill Naruto Uzumaki. That brat has been a pain lately and I want his head mounted on my wall. He hisses out while Kabuto nods and they vanish. Meanwhile, Naruto had landed on the street and saw one of the three-headed snakes. Time to let Yama-chan out to play. He says and bites his thumb, then rolls up the sleeve on his right arm, revealing the Hydra tattoo. He smears his blood on the tattoo and slams his hands onto the ground. Kuchio's no jutsu, Yamata no Orochi. He cries out, and in a huge puff of smoke, a hydra with 8 heads and tails, silver-colored scales and a black underbelly, and 4 legs with black claws on them appeared, with her 8 tails swishing around and the 7 heads swaying back and forth. She also had 2 folded black bat-like wings on each of her sides. It was Yamata no Orochi, queen of the reptile clan and divine beast of the dragon clan. Her land form is the form of a dragon. Naruto was on the middle head while the snakes stopped causing destruction and looked up, only to tremble in fear at who they saw. Some of the ninja saw the new summon and started to sweat bullets. Oh no, not another one. One Junin called out, but the other one was wondering. Why isn't the snake attacking? What's it waiting for? The second one asks. Hey, isn't that Uzumaki on that snake? The third Junin asks while the others squint his eyes. It is. But why would he summon a snake? The first one asks. That's not a snake, said a deep voice. They turned around to see the Sandame in his battle uniform. Sandame-sama. If that isn't a snake, then what is it? He asks while Sarutobi looks at him. That is Yamata no Orochi, the Hachibi no Akuhe and ruler of the divine reptiles. He says while their eyes widen. She's a Biju. The Anbu with a lion mask asks. Yes, but she's a divine beast. He replies while their eyes widen. I wonder how he got that contract. Probably from Mei. He says quietly. Meanwhile, one of Orochi's heads looks at Naruto. Hello Naruto-kun. I didn't expect to have you summon me so soon. Shiroi says while Naruto looks at her with a small grin. Hey Shiroi-chan. I thought you'd like to get reacquainted with some old friends. He says, pointing to the 3 snakes. Another of her heads look at the quivering forms of the snakes and an evil grin appears on her face. Well, if it isn't the triplets. I'm gonna enjoy hearing you vile worms scream. Her 7 heads let out a mighty roar, making the earth beneath them shake. She then walks towards the trembling snakes and then she spreads her large wings and takes off into the sky. Whoa! Naruto cries out and adds chakra to his feet to stop himself from falling. Sorry Naruto-kun, she says while he lets out a sigh of relief. Don't worry, I'm fine. I didn't know you had 2 forms, Shiroi-chan. Naruto says and she smiles. Yes, I have 2 forms. The one you saw in my realm was my water form. This is my land form. She says while Naruto nods. Cool. But I think your human form is way better. He says while a tint of pink appears on her face. We can flirt later, fox boy, but now we have some bugs to exterminate. She says, getting a nod from the blonde. Hey Naruto, get ready to perform a wind jutsu. She said, and one of the heads opens its mouth and a ball of red fire appears swirling around. Naruto nods and performs a few seals and sucks in air. Futen. Mugen Daitupa, infinite great breakthrough. He then unleashes a huge gust of wind at the 3 snakes while Shiroi's head shoots out a powerful red flame. Kaden. Akuhe Enko, Hydra Flame. Yujitsu. Hinote Bufu, Fusion Jutsu, Firestorm. The fire combines with the wind, creating a huge fire that moves towards the snakes at high speed and the attack hits. The snakes cry out in pain as they were reduced to charcoal and their forms collapse while the flames devour their bodies. Shiroi cackles with glee in her eyes when she saw the burning bodies of the snakes while landing near the rubble. The Akuhe then lowers her head down and Naruto leaps off her head. Thanks Shiori-chan. Anytime Naruto-kun. Let's do this again. Yeah, she says and disappears in a puff of smoke. Naruto sniffs the air and smells the scent of burning snake meat. Ew. He says while some of the Chunin and Junin perform water jutsu to put the burning snakes out. That was when Jiraiya appeared out of nowhere grinning and pats the kid on the back. Nice bonfire Gaki, he says, and the blonde looks at his godfather. Where were you, Kyofu? Naruto asks while Jiraiya shrugs. Just went to swat a few flies. Anyway, thanks for dealing with those snakes. I was on my to help you, but when I saw Yamada I figured you had the situation under control and let you increase your representative. He says while Naruto chuckles at the man. Thanks he started to say until he heard a voice Ho didn't want to hear. Hey Dobi. Sasuke yells with Sakura following behind him. Naruto smacks his head when he saw those two. Oh Kami. He mutters while Jiraiya raises an eyebrow when the Uchiha approaches him. I saw you riding on that creature and performing that jutsu. Where did you get them? He demanded. None of your business Uchiha, now piss off. He says while the Uchiha frowns. I wasn't asking looser, now tell me where you got that creature, those swords, and those jutsu now. He yelled. Yeah Baka, tell Sasuke-kun where you got those at. Sakura screamed and Jiraiya winced from her voice. Naruto suddenly appeared in front of Sasuke's face and grabbed him by the collar of his shirt, shocking the Uchiha and releasing ki on the boy. Now you listen here, you jutsu stealing sucking emo. He said, making the brooder's eyes widen. I don't have to tell you shit. I'm a chunin, you bitch, and I can have your shinobi license suspended or have you removed from the program permanently for ordering me around, and the last time I checked, only the Hokage can order the ninja around, and you little boy are not the Hokage.